Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily with Ray Flowers, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to use the promo code FSD20 for a 20% discount on the products over at fantasyguru.com. Hey there, one and all. I'm Ray Flowers of fantasyguru.com. This is Fantasy Sports Daily, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're here talking sports. Today, we're talking baseball and football. Not that that's different. We've been doing a lot of baseball here, but it is NFL Draft Day. Woo! So let's get into it. What are we going to be talking about today? Well, here you go. Here is the rundown. We're going to have some performance talk. People have been asking about what's wrong with Corbin Carroll, and we need to figure this out. So we're going to go through a breakdown of Corbin Carroll and see if we can figure out what's going on with Corbin. It's been a rough start to the season. We'll have talk about Garrett, Crochet, Connor, Wong, and then a host of youngsters, all kinds of player movement, roster movement here the last 24 hours. Pete Crow, Armstrong, Hunter Goodman, Addison, Barger, Jordan Walker, Simeon, Woods-Richardson. And then we'll talk about the bullpen scenario with the Cubs, focusing on Hector, Neris. But of course, there's multiple guys involved there. We'll also have injury news. And we talk about this every day. Blake Snell, Brian Bello, Max Scherzer, good news. Framber, Valdez, good news. AJ Puck moving to the bullpen. Jhoan, Duran, Gavin, Williams, and then on the offensive side, Lane Thomas, Ozzie, Albies, JD Martinez, Zack, Gelof, and JP Crawford. Some good news, some bad news, but that's kind of the way things go anymore when we're talking about injuries in Major League Baseball. We're going to talk that football today with Armando Marsal, one of our buddies over at fantasyguru.com. We're going to kind of go over some of the main storylines in the NFL, which obviously at this point of the calendar with the draft tonight is going to be focusing heavily on the draft. How does he see the first round playing out? What quarterbacks is he see going? Is he different than the rest of our staff? Is there a name at a position or two that he's kind of different than the crew at fantasyguru.com? We'll quiz Armando when he's coming on here in about a half an hour. Don't forget to use the promo code FSD20 to get the products over at fantasyguru.com. And don't forget to listen to us on the website at Elite Plus on the top. Go to fantasyguru.com, click on the Elite Plus tab at the top. You find all the shows. On YouTube, youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. And then you can also find us as well over on your local podcast networks, Pandora, Spotify, iTunes, all that. Just type in Fantasy Sports Daily. We also have a great deal going for you, folks. That's right. Beep, 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 beep. I think it's still active. The Platinum Package, 50% off everything we do in one package. You don't have to worry about, did I add this sport? Do I get this add-on or whatever? You get everything. 50 special. 50 special is the promo code to get everything we do. And that's every article, access to every Discord room, all the seasonal content, all the wagering content, all the DFS content, all of the sports, live streams, whatever we might do, podcasts. There are podcasts other than this one that are pay over at fantasyguru.com. Get the all-in VIP Platinum package. Use that promo code 50 special, and you will be off and rolling with the Elite Mafia. All right, let's get going here. Let's talk a little bit, baseball, focusing on what the hell is wrong with Patrick Corbin. Patrick Corbin. Freudian slip, a guy that struggles a lot. Corbin Carroll, how about that? A guy who is struggling. Now, last year, Corbin Carroll was spectacular. He went 25-50, scored 100 runs, hit 285, was a superstar. First-round pick everywhere. A lot of drafts, he was going top 5 this year. I don't think there was a projection model out there that didn't think he was stealing 40 bases, scoring 100 runs, hitting 20 home runs. He's come into this season and he's been in a slump. And, it's one thing to say it's been 24 games and he's had a slump. Okay, that happens, right? Everyone slumps. It's not surprising. He hit 208 right now. He could hit 408 the next 24 games and he's hitting 300 for the season, right? Like, that's a possibility. But when you dig in here, there are some concerning signs with Corbin Carroll. His walk rate is way up. It's 13%, which is excellent, okay? His strikeout rate is down, which is 15% from 19% last year. So we have a huge growth. His walk to strikeout ratio is 0.9. Last year was 0.5. So that's significant and positive growth. Really like to see that, right? Like his control of the strike zone is improving. What about his O swing? What about those swings on pitches outside the strike zone? It's slightly better than last season. So not only is he taking walks and avoiding strikeouts, he hasn't expanded the strike zone. His swing rate, it's about 2% different than last year. So he's basically right on what he did last year. So all of that looks good and normal and actually slightly positive with Corbin Carroll. But what's happening when he hits the baseball? Here's the real issue when he's hitting the baseball. His launch angle was 11% last year. This year, it's 8%. Don't want to see that. Love to see the 11% number. 8, so getting a little low. The barrel rate was 8% last year. It's 5% this year. It's early, but that's a disconcerting start. His hard hit rate last year was 41%. This year, it's 24%. Okay. Which is terrible. Not only is it a catastrophic fall, it's just a terrible number. Then we've got the exit velocity. And the exit velocity is 83 miles an hour, which is down 7 miles an hour almost from last season. The fact is, when he's hitting the baseball, nothing is happening. Okay. He's pulling the ball less. His pull rate's down about 5%. He's basically dumping everything into the opposite field, which again plays a lot into I'm taking walks, I'm not striking out. He's covering the strike zone. He's putting the ball in play, but he's not driving the baseball. And therein lies the concern with Corbin Carroll. I've seen people say, well, is it his shoulder rate? Well, he hurt his shoulder last year. He's had shoulder issues, Maybe, he isn't a big guy. He's 5'10", 170. He's not a big fella, right? So, maybe that's part of this. But the fact of the matter is that we can look at who he is. We can look at his season last year and predict improvement. I think that's very fair, right? But when we look under the hood right now, there's not a reason to get excited about that. Like if you didn't know his pedigree and you had never seen him play and you just looked at his numbers for this season, would you even be interested in having this guy on your team? This is Jose Caballero. Like, would you even care? If you have Carroll, I don't think there's anything you can do. We're getting some questions yesterday in Discord over at fantasyguru.com asking me, hey, Ray, I'm going to look to trade Carroll. What can I get? If I can get 85% of what I drafted him for, do I do it? And it's like, well, it's hard to say I'm going to trade my first round pick less than a month into the season for 85% of what I paid. The overall signs are concerning. If you were to do something like that, I'm not going to look at you funny and make fun of you. Okay, I'm gonna understand why you did that. If I had Corbin Carroll, I wouldn't do that. I would still keep him because, again, it doesn't take a hell of a lot. He's already got 8 steals too, right? Like, he's on pace for 45 steals. He's not even doing anything. I still think he's going to be productive. Now, is it up to the level of last season? And I said this in the preseason this year. And we run into this a lot with players. We ran into this with Mike Trout in his first full season. We had, 30 home runs and 49 steals. Sometimes the best statistical season these guys produce is very early in their careers. I know a lot of people drafted Carroll and were expecting 30 home runs and 50 steals. And it's like, well, okay, there's a path where that happens. But it was more than likely he's still a 20 to 25 home run guy and he's a 40 to 50 steal guy. So expectations were very high. Start is very slow. Again, as I noted, I'd be very cautious with moving him. I just think that, we're in a scenario where dealing Corbin Carroll is not necessarily going to lead to the best result for you in the fantasy space. I would try to hold. If someone will trade you, Freddie Freeman for him, something like that, okay. But if it's one of these, I'm going to give you Brandon Marsh and I'm going to toss in Garrett Crochet, I wouldn't be doing something like that. Speaking of Garrett Crochet, I've seen a lot of people say, what the hell's wrong with Garrett Crochet? And my response is kind of tongue-in-cheek. What did you expect? Did you expect him to win the Cy Young Award this year? The problem with Crochet is something that we have laid out a lot. It's why I wasn't overly excited about adding Crochet. It's why we talked about Crochet. And I said, look, okay, he'll be fine. But the last 3 times he's been on the hill, it's been 5, 7, and 5 runs, including last night against Minnesota. And Minnesota is not an offense to fear at the moment. So that's depressing. His first 3 outings, he allowed 4 runs. So the last 3 outings, he's allowed more runs in each outing than he did the first 3. The home runs have started to become an issue. That's 4 in the last 2 games. He's allowed 6 in the last 5 starts. And he drops to 1 and 4. Just like we talked about with Eric Fetty the other day, the White Sox are not going to win games. They're not. Okay. By the way, I'm looking at the comment section. I don't know if the comments are working or not working for folks today, but I only see 1 comment. So if you're leaving questions, try to leave them again. I'll try to get to them at the end of the show. I'm not seeing them, which is very strange, but I'm not seeing them right now. So I just want to let everyone know that. I'm not ignoring you, and I won't be ignoring you in the end if I don't see them. But just got a low count this morning, so I'm just putting it out there. I know you can hear me, so that's a positive. But I just want to make sure. Looking at again, back at Garrett Crochet, there's a lot of strikeouts here, but there's a lot of concern. He's been injured. He's trying to find his footing. The fact is that there's workload. Just the workload is the biggest thing for me. He's not the guy from the first 3 starts. He's not the guy from the last 3 starts. He's in the middle. And what is that? That's a guy that's going to get some strikeouts and have some ratio issues. I'm very comfortable saying that. And he's with the White Sox team, as we talk about here, that sucks. They're just really bad. And being that the case, can he win 10 games even if he pitches 135 innings? I don't know. The answer to that is yes. I think it's probably no. So, I hope that if you added Crochet, you kept your expectations in check, or you added him and then traded him. Again, he's not a 6 ERA guy. If you look behind that, he's still got a 5-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio, still got the 1-2 whip, right? Things to like, but there are concerns, obviously, as we're laying out with Garrett Crochet. Okay, let's talk about one of the other up-and-comers right now. Connor Wong went 4-for-4 last night with 2 home runs. He's been on absolute fire. He had it, but his home runs average last like 410 feet last night. He had a single that was 108 miles an hour. He's mashing the baseball. He's absolutely mashing the baseball. And it really does look like now he's taking over from Reese McGuire, the backstop position with the Red Sox. Does have some split issues and so I don't think and again, catchers don't play every day. We know this. But Connor Wong, with the way he's hitting of late, and he's in the cash game breakdown that I wrote this morning over at fantasyguru.com. With the way he's rolling, I can't tell anyone not to pick him up, right? If you're in a 2-catcher league and he's out there, go for it. Like, who's your second catcher? Go for it if he's still on the waiver wire. In a 1-catcher league, especially if you're in like a 10 or 12 teamer, I still have pause. So the answer of whether to add Connor Wong comes down to who are you dropping to add Connor Wong. If you can add him and you're ready to float it and you're going to go 2 or 3 weeks and see how it goes and okay, no harm, no foul, sure. If you're adding him, expecting him to hit 18 home runs and drive in 75 runs this year, I think we need to back off those expectations. But he does hit the baseball hard. He's had periods of time where he's been very effective, including last year. And right now he's just blazing hot. He's just extremely locked in, and he makes a good addition off the waiver wire. Now, we were talking yesterday about Cody Bellinger, and I went back and reviewed this to make sure I wasn't having a mental breakdown. Cody Bellinger had an injury. He was removed from the game. We talked about it. I mentioned the fact that the report suggested they ran x-rays and everything is fine. That's what the report said. I went back and verified that's what the report said. Later in the day yesterday, he was placed on the injured list with a fractured rib. Now, I'm no doctor. I don't read x-rays. I know that fractures, and you can miss hairline fractures, and sometimes it's the angle that the image is taken, or it's very fine. Like, I get it, all right? But the fact is the team came out and said he didn't have any broken bones or issues with his ribs. He was going to be fine. And he got placed on the injured list with a rib fracture, 18 hours later. So be that as it is, Bellinger's on the injured list. Now we have to deal with Pete Crow Armstrong, who was called up. And he's a very exciting prospect. I wrote about him over at fantasyguru.com. You can check out the scenario with the scouting report for rookies over at the site. Go to the top, MLB seasonal MLB articles, rookies, right? And it brings all up. And basically, here's my profile of him. He's known for 2 things, his glove and his wheels. And there's more detail in that, but that's what it is. He's an excellent defensive player, and he can motor. And his bat has actually come around, and it's got to the point where, maybe he hits 20 home runs at the big league level. Now, the real question for him, obviously, is if he's going to be a 15 to 20 home run guy and steal 30 bases, that's someone we're going to take seriously in the fantasy space. Like a season that Bryson Stott posted last year. That could be Pete Crow Armstrong. How long is Bellinger out? How much runway does Pete Crow Armstrong get? Because remember, Seiya Suzuki's also on the injured list here. So I think PCA, I had to make sure I got that right. If he's added in your league, it's got to be a short-term addition. Understanding that Bellinger and Suzuki come back, they're obviously right back in that lineup. And then the playing time, like where would PCA fit? So be cautious you don't blow budgets here because you get excited about his fantasy outlook, because you consider the fact that, he's got power and speed, and maybe you can dream on it. And maybe, right? Suzuki has one of those years where he can't get healthy. Maybe the same thing with Bellinger. Maybe someone else gets hurt. Maybe Ian Happ goes down. But that playing time scenario is really tough with PCA. It's why I told someone the other day, it was so funny. I told someone the other day when they were asking, do I take A or B? And one of the 2, B, was Pete Crow Armstrong. And I'm like, look, I just don't see where he comes up. And then Bellinger gets an injury and he's called up the next day. So this is how this works. A lot of these guys obviously get an opportunity because they are replacing an injured player. And then it's a matter of, can they crush it and impress so much in a limited time span that teams feel, well, we'll keep this guy around and see how it goes? Or do they struggle a bit or even just play average? Pete Crow Armstrong goes out there and, hits 229 with a 318 on base percentage, steals a couple bases. Okay, it's fine. Is that going to push the team to keep him when Suzuki and Bellinger come back? No. So cautious optimism, because that is a skill set that really we can dream on in the fantasy space. Hunter Goodman was called up recently by the Rockies, and yesterday he was called up. Michael Toglia was demoted. Toglia is looking like a flame out at this point. He's not producing. He can't, the Rockies suck, and he couldn't even get in the lineup on a consistent basis, couldn't produce on a consistent basis. So here comes Hunter Goodman. Used to be a catcher eligible player. Now he's no longer that, which really hurts his value, because that would be, this dude can mash. Like on the 20-80 scale, he's got like a 70 in the home run column, like the power department. He can mash, okay? Kind of like Sam Huff with the Rangers. But Goodman can mash, and he's off to a really good start at the minors, hitting about 300, 350 on base percentage, a near 700 slugging percentage down at AAA. Now, I wrote about him in the scouting report before the season began for rookies as well, and I put this, he's eclipsed 70 dongs the last 2 years. It's Michael Toglia and Goodman, who's the first baseman of the future for this team. Maybe it's Goodman. Doesn't strike out a ton, Goodman. It's around 25% is his strikeout rate. But he also only has a 6% walk rate. So he doesn't walk a lot. He's looking to do damage, and he does damage when he catches up to the ball. He's not pull happy, but he's pull conscious. He really tries to pull things. Station to station on the bases. He is not NOT, not an athletic player at all. He might even be considered a poor athlete, to be fair, but he's got cores and he can hit. And the thing is, the Rockies are really struggling. They've got injuries. Chris Bryant's down. Nolan Jones has struggled, and then he's dealing with the back issue. They just demoted Toglia. Like, there's this path for Goodman to get 480 plate appearances, because, if he starts hitting, and even if it's 250, with 28 home runs, they need something like that. So Goodman's a sneaky addition right now. But again, limited player, not going to help you at all on the base paths. Could lose playing time when everyone gets healthy. But that is a power bat, and power bats and cores, we like an awful lot. Let's talk about Jordan Walker for a second. Jordan Walker is 21 years old. And there are players in the Hall of Fame that never saw the big leagues at 20 years of age, like Walker did last year, or 21 years of age, like Walker did this year. Fact of the matter is that Walker, given the expectations, has been a failure. Pulling back big picture, could he still be a 2020 player at the major league level? Absolutely. He's 21 years old. But he was demoted yesterday. And, he's hitting 155. His OPS is around 500, has failed to produce a base hit in 12 of the 20 games he played. The Cardinals had seen enough. So he was demoted. This, again, does not, if you're in a dynasty league, don't panic. Don't worry. Hold on. If you're in a keeper league, it depends on, is he a 28th round keeper? Is he one of your 5 keepers? So it depends there. But really, like I was saying, I didn't expect him, as others did last year, to go 2020. He did. People expected that. Last year he was demoted, and he came back better than before the demotion. So let's assume a similar thing happens this year. Let's assume he finds a stroke down on the farm. Let's assume that things improve and he starts to reach his talent level. This can all happen. Now let's hope he doesn't become Joe Adell, guy struggling for years to get there, right? I think it's way too early to be making that, he's a quad 4 player. He just doesn't have it right now. It's way too early to make that assessment of Jordan Walker. But he has been demoted. If you've got him in any redraft league, I see very little reason to hold on to him. If he goes down and hits 380 over 2 weeks in the minors and they call him back up and there's a slight bidding war on waivers, then, so be it. But at this point, we just haven't seen much from him. He hasn't been really anything other than average major league hitter. This year, he's been much worse than that, and the Cardinals made the decision to demote him. The Blue Jays called up Addison Barger. The fact is that Kevin Kiermaier has been placed on the injured list with a hip issue. Barger was killing it. He's hitting over 300 with 1,000 OPS down at AAA. His best attribute is his power. He's MLB Pipeline's number 6 rated Blue Jay prospect. So he's a higher end prospect. Muscular, strong guy. Power is his calling card. The problem is, and we see this, let's draw a loose comparison to Vlad Guerrero. Barger has tons of power, but he hits everything in the ground. He, over 115 games at AAA, He's got a ground ball rate, a fly ball rate, of like 25%. It's not good. It's not good at all. That's like 10% below the league average. So if you don't lift the ball and power is your big thing, you see the dilemma here. It's hard to envision Barger becoming a real thing right now at the big league level. I think that Davis Schneider, couldn't think of his name, is more likely to see playing time in the outfield on a consistent basis than Barger. Maybe I'm wrong. Kiermaier does have an extensive injury history. We know that. But I think Schneider is certainly there. He made the club. He was effective last year. I think he's got a chance to at least mix and match with Barger, if not take a little bit more of the lead with the opening in the lineup on a daily basis. So be cautious with Barger. I think, like, as an example, Goodman to me is slightly more intriguing because I can see that, again, that 480 plate appearance scenario with Goodman potentially occurring. With Barger, it's really tough to see that happening. Guy that's starting here soon, and over at fantasyguru.com, you can see it on the screen there. You can buy any baseball product, be it the wagering product or the DFS product, and you get all the other sports but football for free. So buy MLB wagering, MLB DFS, and you get NBA, NHL, PGA, MMA, soccer, racing, all of that for free on top of it. I mentioned that because the cash game breakdown's up over at fantasyguru.com right now. I wrote it late into the night last night, got up early this morning in the dark, so it's up and posted for people to view. I mentioned that because the Twins were intending to start Simeon Woods-Richardson, who we talked about earlier this week. On Friday, they decided to start him Thursday. They backed up Bailey Ober. Bailey Ober is going to go tomorrow. Made the write-up more difficult today because Bailey Ober was going to be in it. But I just want to let everyone know that Simeon Woods-Richardson is pitching today. If you missed it, we did talk about him a couple of days ago. You can find that information. I believe it was episode 126, if I'm not mistaken. You can find out my thoughts there. But he'll be starting today, and we'll see how it goes. Now let's talk a little bit about the Cubs bullpen. The Cubs bullpen, Hector Neris got the save yesterday against the Astros. He gave up a run. So it wasn't a clean inning, but he gave up a run, got the save. Albert Alzolay pitched the 6th inning. Oof. And Mark Leiter worked the 8th inning. So this is what we were talking about the other day. I will actually be updating the closer grid today over at fantasyguru.com. So look for that update. Let me take a sip here. So that'll be updated. I'll give my thoughts on the bullpen. Generally speaking, as I said, I think this is still a 3-person race. I think Alzolay could still lead this team in saves. I did say I'm going to go with Neris right now if I had to choose somebody, but it is very messy. Seeing Alzolay pitch in the 6th inning is a little concerning. Neris in the 9th, Leiter in the 8th, 7th, 6th being Alzolay, like that's a potential outcome too. So you got to keep that in mind with the Cubs bullpen. Some injury situations to discuss before we bring on Armando Marsal to talk some football here. Blake Snell was placed on the injured list with the left abductor strain. I talked about this earlier. He showed up late, wasn't ready to go, came out and pitched like ass, and now he's on the injured list. This is a total bomb move. The Giants gave him $30+ million, and April was hideous, and he might miss May with the abductor strain. We don't know how much time he's going to miss for sure, but this is terrible. It's just a terrible signing at the moment. Maybe Snell can find his groove, but he's been a killer to the Giants. He's been a killer in fantasy leagues. Now we don't know how much time he's going to miss with the abductor issue. The Giants have injuries. They're already without Alex Cobb. They've got Robbie Ray. Like Cobb, Ray, and Snell could be the 1, 2, and 3 on a championship level team. And all 3 of the Giants starters are on the injured list, much like the Astros dealing with all this stuff. So Blake Snell's out. Put him on the injured list. We'll see. But Blake Snell. Brian Bello of the Red Sox, one of these guys that was drafted in the middle rounds, that was in the Breakout Pitcher of the Year article, pitching very well. He's got right lat soreness. He's been placed on the injured list. They're saying it's going to be a short stay. I don't even know if that stuff's true anymore. Bello's down. I mean, here we go again. So another guy going down. Max Scherzer, positive news, pitch yesterday. He hit 93.8 miles an hour on the fastball at the top end. His average fastball was 92.2 miles an hour. So, a little down, but it was good. He threw 5 pitches, so he was used his whole repertoire. Didn't get good results. He threw 2 1/3 innings, gave up 3 runs, but threw 52 pitches. 1 or 2 more outings in the minors, and we could see him in the bigs like we've been talking about. So, I think they would. He threw 52 pitches yesterday. I think they let him go 65 the next. Maybe they give him another one, get him up to 75, and then call him up. So maybe 2 more starts would be my guess. That's a guesstimate. It might be before then. It is Max Scherzer. Overall, a positive, even though the results weren't there yesterday for Max Scherzer. Framber Valdez threw a 40-pitch bullpen session on Wednesday. Everything looks good with his form. Sounds like he's going to pitch this weekend against the Rockies in Mexico. Don't start him. We've talked about this. Don't pitch anyone in Mexico. It's the bandbox of bandboxes. There are 9 gazillion runs scored in Mexico when they play there. But great news that Valdez' arm issue appears to have been minor like they told us. Good news, Astros. Way to go. Way to tell us the truth. I like that. AJ Puck's got a shoulder issue. He's been transferred to the bullpen. Or he will be transferred to the bullpen when he returns from the shoulder issue because he's been placed on the injured list. Sixto Sanchez last night, my former guy, the guy I loved. He pitched last night. He got 3 runs over 2 2/3 innings. He threw 50-some-odd pitches in the no decision against the Braves. Didn't look great, but okay. There's a chance that Sanchez ends up in this rotation. Very surprised by that, but we still without Garrett, who's close to returning. We've had all the injuries we've talked about. Puck is getting demoted from the bullpen to the bullpen, where he's had success in the past. Maybe Sixto Sanchez gets a spot in this rotation. Even if he does, remember, he was in the 50s with his pitch count yesterday. He threw 2 2/3 innings. There are no innings on his arm because he's been hurt for years, literally hurt for years. If he threw 100 innings this season, I'd be surprised. So, we can dream on the skills. We can dream on the talent. But there's, for me, unless you're in like in an NL-only league, there's just no push right now to add him, even if they say, hey, he's part of our rotation moving forward. Jhoan Duran's going to make another outing tomorrow down on the farm in his return from the oblique. We talked about this the other day. Didn't have great results in his first outing. Was at about a 50% strike rate, something like that, if I remember right. His velocity was 98 miles an hour, so he's down a couple miles an hour there. He'll have another effort in the minors. My assumption would be after that, he'll be activated early next week. So he should be good to go for the Twins, barring the setback. A setback was had for Gavin Williams. He's been out, the young potential star of the Guardians, who we saw last season, who was also mentioned in the Breakout Pitcher of the Year article. He's been out all season with right elbow issue. Everything was supposedly going well. He was trending toward good things. He had continued or renewed, I guess, discomfort after a throwing session to live batters. It was termed the same thing as before. That is not good. Okay, so they shut him down. They rested him. They're slowly building him back up. Now he's having pain in the same area again. This is not good news. They gave him an injection. They said they're going to shut him down for 7 days and then see. So, best case scenario, they're shutting him down for 7 days and he's going to have to start to build things back up again. So, really, best case scenario is probably he returns in late May. That's a best case scenario. With the arm issue coming up again, with an injection, is he back in June? Do they shut him down for a couple of months? I don't know, but this is really looking a little scary. No surgical intervention's been mentioned, nothing like that, but it is getting to be a little bit scary looking at the situation with Gavin Williams, because Yiker Rooney's a setback that includes a situation with him having the same issue that he had previously. That is no bueno. Okay, we got a few players to talk about on the offensive side of things. Before we bring in Armando Marsal, let's go through them quickly. Lane Thomas was placed on the 10-day injured list with that sprained left knee. We talked about that. We were hoping he wasn't going to have to place on the injured list. He was. He says he doesn't think it's a serious issue, but at the same time, he's using crutches. So players are often optimistic. We don't have a timetable yet. We have heard there's no surgery necessary. Let's hope it's 2-3 weeks with the MCL strain. It could be 4 to 6. We just don't have a timeline yet for Lane Thomas, but he's going to be out. Good news, though, again, he's not dealing with the surgical situation, at least at the moment. Ozzie Albies is trending toward that return. He's got that toe issue after fouling the ball off it. He started hitting earlier this week. He ran the bases yesterday. Very reasonable to think he could be back this weekend for the Braves, which is great news because when it occurred, we just didn't know how much time he was going to miss. So good news there. JD Martinez went 2 for 4. He's 3 for 8 his last 2 games down at AAA. Anthony DeComo did not say that JD Martinez will now be transferred to the Mets, but he kind of said he expected it. So it does look like JD Martinez is on the cusp of being promoted to the Mets. The Mets could obviously use him. They've got Alonso there in the middle lineup. They throw in, JD Martinez behind Alonso, and Lindor starts to look much better. Lindor's finally started to swing the bat much better, as I'm sure you're all aware. They've got Brendan Nimmo to get on base at the top, potentially a really good top 4. Starling Marte's look good. So this lineup can start to improve. And they could use that injection of offensive input and oomph, especially with Francisco Alvarez on the injured list right now. Zack Gelof is dealing with a left oblique strain. I didn't see it officially done this morning, but last night the comment was made by Mark Kotze, the manager, that he's likely to go on the injured list. Gelof's going on the injured list. Managers don't say that unless it's going to happen. He's going on the injured list. We'll see how much time he misses. Obliques, again, can be 2 to 6 weeks. Usually they're around 4, usually. We're probably going to see Abraham Toro in the lineup consistently for the Athletics if that floats your boat, and it really shouldn't. But that's what they are probably going to do here. And then finally, J.P. Crawford was scratched from the Mariners lineup last night with right oblique soreness. Again, I have not seen an update on him in the sense that he's been placed on the injured list or anything like that. I'm scanning lineups right now to see if they've announced it. Mariners haven't announced their lineup yet, so I don't know for certain. But soreness in the oblique. They had soreness in the oblique of Gelof, and then an hour later, we heard he's going on the injured list most likely. Could be looking at a similar situation here as well with J.P. Crawford, and he's had a tough start to the season. So really can ill afford to have a setback physically. We'll return to baseball at the end of the show here, and I'll hit up the questions in the chat room. Again, I've only seen one question, so I don't know if there's a problem today. Usually we have 35 comments. We only have a couple today, so hopefully everyone's able to view everything today. If not, I apologize. I'm not ignoring you. I only see one full question that I'll get to here in a bit, but we'll see what we can do here as we move forward. We do have some exciting and good news right now. For $19.99, you can get the off-season football package at fantasyguru.com. That includes all of our coverage of the off-season, so all the player movements and free agency. It covers our run-up here to the draft later tonight, all the player profiles, the breakdowns, the rankings of all these youngsters. Only $19.99 franchise mode over at fantasyguru.com. Click the subscribe now tab in the top right corner, and you can get access to that. I bring that up because we're going to talk a little football right now. We had to talk football today, of course. And one of our guys who you've seen here many times, you've heard on the SiriusXM show at night, you've heard on the SiriusXM show with Jeff last week, and you've seen him here on Fantasy Sports Daily. That is Armando Marsal, who is flossing the T-shirt of fantasyguru.com. It's not a new one. It's an older one, but I love it. Armando, my lady actually loves that shirt. It's very soft. She actually wears it to sleep some nights. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, this is a soft shirt. I'm wearing it today. I mean, you said we should be talking football. Is there a reason why we should be talking football today? I think
there's never a reason.
It's the NFL draft. Right? I woke up extra excited, extra happy today, man.
Right.
It's going to be a good day. I think it's going to be, this is a very talented draft class, and there's a lot, very deep receiver position. And I think we're going to see a fun draft. I think we're going to see, we usually see offensive linemen coming off the board, defense. I think you're going to see a lot more, offensive players like receivers and quarterbacks come off the board. And this is good for fantasy. So I'm sure that the fantasy players are going to be excited, a little bit more excited about this draft than in years past. So I'm looking forward to talking with you about that here today.
By the way, before we get into some of the questions here, what is your plan for the day? Like how does your day unfold once you get off the show today?
Yeah, so I'm going to continue monitoring news and stuff. We have a live stream today at 8 p.m. I'm going to be jumping on a little later than the guys are, but we have a live stream at 8 p.m. sharp. We're going to be covering the entire draft. We're going to go, pick by pick, giving our thoughts and how some of these picks impact the fantasy landscape for some of these players. But for me, look, I already got my workout in this morning, Ray. I'm going to be diving into some NFL stuff, and then I'll also start kind of looking into some basketball stuff as well. We got the NBA playoffs, but primarily going to be focusing today on the NFL draft. I just look at news, look at any reports, anything that surfaces. Sometimes you got a late report that surfaces on some of these players that maybe could impact their draft position. So just, maybe trades that you hear, rumors, things like that. So I am looking forward to all of that as we get closer to the NFL draft here this evening.
There's a whole series of rankings over at fantasyguru.com for the rookie class. And again, that's part of the offseason franchise mode. If people want to sign up now, they can still do that. And, everyone, we've got the staff, top 10s at each of the positions. The quarterback that's likely to go number one off the board to Chicago is Caleb Williams. I think you're the lowest on the staff in terms of your projection for Caleb Williams. Talk to us about him. Why are you not sold that maybe taking him first is the best move for the Bears to make?
So I am the only one that, so if you go on fantasyguru.com, he's fourth in my rank. He's the only one that has him fourth as well as Rich Mello. So I do want to give Rich Mello a shout out because he also has him fourth. Everyone else has him number one. Mm-hmm. All right. Look, for me, there's one quarterback in this draft class who I have ranked number one. That's Drake May, who stands up for me. When I look at everything, he stands above and beyond everyone else. I look at McCarthy, I look at Williams, and I look at Daniels very close. What really concerns me about Williams is his size. And now we're seeing some character things, right? I don't know if you've read the reports where he didn't want to share, his medical records. I know these are little things, right? These are little things, but for me, these little things matter, right? Because these are little things you don't see on stat sheet. One of the things that stood out for me about CJ Stroud last year was a lot of his post game interview. And he had an interview before the draft. And the way he spoke and kind of where you saw where he was in the headspace, I'm like, okay, this kid is ready. This kid is, he's about the game. He knows he's really good, but he's also very humble. And he knows that there's a lot of work to be done. And for me, that speaks volumes, because it is part of the process of your evaluation of these players. It's just not their physical skills. Caleb Williams is, physically, you look at what he does on the field, great player. Great, but that doesn't always transition to the NFL. So for me, the fact that he's undersized, I generally am very hesitant about undersized quarterbacks. I'm not going to say that he's Bryce Young and that's what's going to happen here. But that was a big concern for me last year. He's not as small as Young, but between the size, he flashed some inconsistencies throughout college. He really wasn't always playing at a high level consistently. He did have some phenomenal games, but at times it was a bit inconsistency with his play. The deep ball. Sometimes showed inconsistency there as well. So aside from those things and the character, that's really the only things. I mean, I think that, once you step away from May, in my opinion, McCarthy, Jaden Daniels and Williams, all very comparable. I look at them all as, 2A, 2B, 2C. Like, I think they're very comparable there. But yeah, I think Caleb Williams is going to go number one. I think the Bears have done a phenomenal job to really, build a very good supporting cast, and not many rookies step into a situation like he's going to step into. So they're doing everything possible to make sure this young man succeeds. And, do I think, he has a potential? Do I think he could be a fancy, relevant quarterback? Yeah. Do I want to invest in him long-term? Do I want him to be my franchise quarterback? The verdict is still out for that. If I'm a GM, and I'm not a GM, right? But if I was a GM and I had the number one overall pick, for me, it would be Drake May. I mean, he just checks off every single box for the most part for me. And, I did his player profile and I compared him. I know he draws a lot of comparisons to Josh Allen, the way he plays, but I look at a more athletic Justin Herbert, and I'm a big fan of Justin Herbert. I think he's a very good quarterback. So I think Drake May has a bright future. So long as he continues to work, towards, becoming a NFL franchise quarterback.
Talking with Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com. Top four are going to be quarterback, wide receiver. Like, that's kind of what everyone's looking at, Armando. Is that how you anticipate things going with Marvin Harrison going number 4 to Arizona?
So the way I look at it, right, I think the first 3 picks are going to be 100% quarterbacks. I think Arizona, it's tough to pass on a receiver like Marvin Harrison, right? Like, it's tough to pass on that kind of player at pick number 4, because realistically, he could arguably be the number 1 overall pick in this draft when you're looking at, talent, everything that he brings to the table, pedigree, all of that stuff. But, right, Arizona has a lot of holes to fill. And this is a very, very deep receiving class. And yes, you're not going to get Marvin Harrison later in this draft. You're not going to get, that kind of talent later in the draft. But there are teams that could move up there to take a quarterback, right, and not take Marvin Harrison. So I think that if there's going to be a trade here, I think we could see it as early as pick 3 or pick 4. I think New England also a team that they need a quarterback, but there are several quarterbacks that they could take later in the draft. Another team with a lot of needs. Arizona, another team with a lot of needs. They obviously don't need a quarterback. They need receiver help, but they also need a lot of help for other things. So if they stay in that pick, I expect Marvin Harrison Jr. to be picked right there. I think that they will take him. I think that that's their pick. I think that's the pick for this team. But am I fully convinced that they're not going to trade out? No, I think there's a chance that they trade out here. And that's kind of what we have to look at here this evening and see if there's any rumors about this. And you're really not going to know until the draft starts, really, because they're not going to make it. I doubt they'd make a trade unless it's a great trade before the draft starts, as they're going to be receiving phone calls for that number 4 pick, and getting a lot of offers. So I think that's the wild card here of the draft early on. I think you're going to see a lot of those situations, but I think early on, that's where the wild card is, right? But if they do stay, yes, Martin Harrison Jr., I think will be a Cardinal in 2024.
What about that 5th pick? That seems to be the one everyone's kind of like, what are the Chargers going to do? There's some people that think they should take Neighbors, the wide receiver. Some people think they should take Bowers, the tight end. Some people think they're going to take Joel, the offensive tackle, because Jim Harbaugh and Roman are obsessed with running the football. What do you think they do? That's a real pivotal pick there, and I think most people are leaning toward the offensive tackle if you read the reports. Is that what you think they do, and is that what you think they should do, Armando?
I think it's tackle, like you mentioned, or Neighbors. I as much as I like Bowers, I just don't see it happening here. I think they're going to go with Neighbors or the tackle. I wouldn't be surprised if they go tackle. If I want to see Neighbors on that offense, I really do. Or if more. So this is the thing. Like if Arizona trades out and whoever trades there is not going to be traded for Marvin Harrison, they're going to be trading for that 4th quarterback. I think, right? So if Marvin Harrison falls to that 5th pick, I think that's a no-brainer for the Chargers. If not, I mean, look, Neighbors, he's number 2 on my board, but he's very, very good. Like he could definitely change the dynamics of this offense right away. But like you mentioned, Harbaugh likes to run the ball. This is a team that, you have to protect your quarterback. We've seen, a lot of these teams. We saw Cincinnati has been investing in their offensive line to, protect Joe Burrow. We see, a lot of these teams with young quarterbacks, they continue to invest in the offensive line. It's important because you got to protect them. And they're going to try to run the ball. So for me, I wouldn't be surprised if they go tackle and they go the non-sexy pick. But man, I really would love to see this team take a receiver like Neighbors, because not only is his fantasy stock going to boost through the roof, but it's really going to give a weapon for Justin Herbert, a much-needed weapon. They got rid of Keenan Allen. Mike Williams is no longer there. Quentin Johnston didn't pan out, last year. He really just did awful as a rookie, really. I was expecting much better results, if we're being honest. So you do need help at the receiver position, but you also need to protect your quarterback. So I feel like this is probably the most difficult of the bunch to choose. But I do think it's offensive tackle or receiver. There's just no other way. Bowers is a luxury pick at that point for the Chargers, I think, and I don't think they go in that direction.
Armando, if you look at the entirety of the first round, you've expressed some concern of Caleb Williams, nothing major, but some concern. Is there a player that's kind of projected to go in the first round that you look at and you're like, yeah, I'm just, I can't get behind that. And again, projections, who knows? Someone's going to be taking 25 spots earlier than they thought tonight. Someone's going to fall 15 spots. We know how this goes. But looking at the current estimates of the first round, is there a player there in general that concerns you a little bit?
So I've seen Bo Nix, maybe Michael Penix, maybe going in the first. I think those would be better off day 2. I think they're going to go the first. But for me, it's always the quarterback position, Ray, right? Like the quarterback position going in the first round, yes, because it's the franchise. And if you hit, you get a franchise quarterback. But it's also the highest variance. Like it's the position with probably the widest ranges of outcomes here. So I think any of the quarterbacks taken in the first round is a risk. And I think that any of them cannot pan out as teams hope. And I think that's, when you're taking, you have to take the quarterback when you need a quarterback in the first round, especially with the draft class like we have here. But I also think it's the position with the most risk. So if there is going to be one player that, disappoints, I'm going to have to bet it's one of the quarterbacks taken in day 1.
Armando Marsal, Ray Flowers here from fantasyguru.com. Armando, you mentioned earlier a trade, and that's something a lot of people are excited about. There could be 1, 2, there could be multiple trades here in the first round. Like there's a lot of rumors circulating. We've got the situation with the Bengals where T. Higgins and Hendrickson yesterday both said we don't want to play her anymore because apparently getting, paid almost $40 million with the 2 of them is not enough. They want out, so there's that. Obviously, the Niners have got the Brandon Ayuk situation, and Jeff Vans and I on the Elite Sports Show, which is Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We talked about the Niners and Ayuk yesterday, and I said it yesterday and I'll repeat it here. Ayuk's catching 75 passes for 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. Like, I don't know what he wants. I mean, that's pretty. I don't know if he wants to get 150 targets like he's Stephon Diggs. I don't know. He's been very productive. The team loves him. The GM, Lynch, came out and said we want to keep him here forever. Like, they're trying to work something out, but there's that line of thought that they're just not going to be able to meet the price. Do you think Brandon Ayuk gets traded? Because he's a huge piece for the Niners to potentially move to a team, and it could change the dynamic of this first round for multiple teams.
I hope not, right? Like, you have to hope not if you're a fan of the game, because he, like you mentioned, he's such a huge piece of this offense. He really makes it work. I know Deebo Samuel's special. I know they have McCaffrey special, George Kittle special, but Brandon Ayuk is just, he's always in the right spot at the right time. Like, he's the guy that, makes that big play when needed for the 49ers. So I don't want to see him go. And if you're him, like, do you want to go and get a little bit more money? Because I think he could still get some pretty decent money in San Francisco. Do you want to go get more money where you might not have the numbers you have, because this is a system, right? We talk about systems and how important they are. Kyle Shanahan's system is, one of the best in football. We've seen it, we've seen him plug quarterbacks in there. We've seen him plug receivers, running backs, and it works, right? So you're going from one of the best offenses, one of the best teams. You're going to be competing for a Super Bowl with this unit. You're going to get paid good money, and you're going to continue posting your stats, like you mentioned, a minimum of 1,000 yards. You're going to be the alpha receiver for a couple of weeks because we know Deebo Samuel tends to miss a couple of games a year. George Kittle also gets dinged up. There's going to be opportunities there. So for me, I hope he stays there. I think eventually they'll figure it out because they know this San Francisco team, they have a great front office, very smart front office, great unit there. They know how valuable he is to this team and how much Ayuk, what he does and his role. So I think they're going to do everything possible to keep him around. Can they get to that number? Is it going to fit in the cap? I don't know. But there's always ways around this stuff, right? We've seen these teams do it. We've seen teams figure out, back-ended, whatever the case may be, guarantee, bonus. It's going to happen. I hope he stays in San Francisco. I think they'll figure it out. I think this is a good enough front office that they'll be able to get that done and just keep him around.
Moving away from the draft, there's a couple situations I want to ask you about, Armando, before we let you go. First one's in Pittsburgh. Really interesting scenario, obviously. They're not paying any money to their two quarterbacks, really, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. We saw Zach Wilson basically get traded for the same thing as Justin Fields, which blows my mind away. Who leads the Steelers in starts this year at the quarterback position? Because, it's not a sexy – if Russell Wilson's leading this offense, it's not sexy, but he was very effective last year in what he was asked to do with the Broncos. And we know that Justin Fields can be a quarterback one. He can be a star. So who leads the Steelers this year and starts the quarterback position?
I think it'll be Russell Wilson, believe it or not. I think long-term is Justin Fields is going to be the answer for this team. But I think this season it's going to be Russell Wilson. I do think we're going to see Fields at some point, but I do think it'll be Russell Wilson, but not by much. Like if it's like a 60-40, I think that's very likely. 55, 45, or whatever the case may be. I think it's going to be that close. Now, I'll tell you this is a good team, right? This is a good offense, a good defense. And if Russell Wilson is winning games and just being efficient, not making mistakes, not losing games, I think that's where it changes. But is he going to do that? We don't know yet. So, but if you're asking me today, I think it's a 60-40 split where Russell Wilson is that guy.
Let's talk about the Chiefs before we let you go, Armando. The Rashee Rice situation, there's been charges filed. We don't know what that's going to lead to in court. We don't know. He's going to get suspended. I think that's the fait accompli at this point. Is it going to be 2 games, 6 games? We don't know. They're going to likely be without Rashee Rice at some point this season, right? The Chiefs. Their GM came out and said, we love Kadarius Toney. He's great. He's special. You look at this receiving room. They added Marquise Brown, and maybe they draft someone here in the first round or something. They make a move in the draft this year. But Rashee Rice really emerged last year. We know what Brown is, and Brown and Rice can coexist in this offense and be very effective, obviously catching passes from Mahomes. Kadarius Toney? I know. But are we buying it? Is there anything to this, or is this just absolute poppycock front office discussion?
I love the Kadarius Toney conversations in April, right? Because it's like, I'm with you. Look, because he flashed at it when he was with the Giants, in a very small window, he flashed some upside and some potential, and we know what he brings to the table. Is he the best receiver on their roster right now? No, he's not. Marquise Brown, obviously Rashee Rice, but we're expecting him to be suspended. So, we're not taking Rice into consideration here. Rice would be the guy, then Brown, then Toney. Look, I talked about this draft class being deep at the receiver position. Kansas City has a 32nd overall pick. They could get someone there, I think, that would be better than Toney, right? I think they could draft someone at that spot that would come in and be better than Toney. I wouldn't be surprised if they go in a direction like that with this whole Rice situation. It really depends on, how lengthy of a suspension and what the plans are here for Kansas City. But I'm sure that they have more information than we do as far as what could potentially be, the penalty here for Rice. Is it 6 games? Is it 8 games? Is it an entire season? We don't know any of this stuff, right? But I'm sure they have a better idea. So for me, if they want a receiver, I don't think they're going to count on Tony. I think they're going to go and get someone in this draft, especially given how deep this draft class is at the position. So that might be a direction that they go in. But no, I'm not buying this Tony stuff. I mean, in best ball, if you're doing a bunch of lineups and you want a little bit of exposure to Tony, sure. Am I looking to draft him in season-long or redraft leagues right now? No, not as things stand today. We would need a couple more injuries there to the receiving group. They don't do anything in this draft, and knowing Rice is going to be suspended for a lengthy amount of time, then maybe we could start talking about investing in Tony. But right now, that's a tough one, Ray. That's a tough one.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yes, there is. There's always a chance, right? There's always a chance. But this chance is think of this. It's like winning the lottery, right? There's a chance, but how good is that chance?
About the same as Jim Carrey had in Dumb and Dumber too. So yeah, I got your point there, Armando. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it. You're obviously doing all the work covering basketball, covering football. You mentioned the fact that there'll be a live stream at 8:00 Eastern tonight. That's what you said, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
NFL draft coverage will be going pick by pick. I mean, live reactions to every pick is what we're going to be doing there today. It'll be Russell Clay, Tyler Beaker, Rich Mileto, and then myself. I'll be joining them a little later, but all 4 of us will be there today. We'll be taking questions too. So if you have any questions, make sure you ask us, and we'll happily answer those questions. And how, I'm sure there's going to be some questions in regards to how this impacts the fantasy, landscape and things like that. So we'll be there answering all the questions and reacting to every pick.
And you also have the live stream on Tuesdays, right?
Yes.
7:00 Eastern as well.
7:00 Eastern. Yeah. Every Tuesday, roster coach. I'm sure next Tuesday is going to be an exciting one after the draft, as there's going to be a lot of moving pieces and a lot of fantasy, will be impacting a lot of fantasy values and things like that for some of these players. So we'll be talking about that. And I'll be doing a podcast this week and kind of reactions to that first round of the postseason. So keep an eye out for that as well.
Yeah, that's at the website. I always talk about it. Go to the Elite Plus tab at the top. That's where you can find this show, Fantasy Sports Daily Store, and you can also find mine and Marsal stored there as well. So check it out. So Armando, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. Have a good day. It's an exciting one, and keep the energy up through the rest of the day.
Thank you so much for having me on. All right. I hope everyone enjoys that NFL draft today.
You got it, Armando. Thanks a lot, buddy. Appreciate it. That is Armando Marsal. And again, he laid out all the ways that you can see his work and get involved in it. Elite Plus tab at the top. You can find Mind of Marsal. He's often bringing people on from staff talking about various things in the world of sports. So check that out at fantasyguru.com. Okay, looking at the comments here, as I said right at the end. Again, I don't know if there was a problem today. If there was, I apologize, folks. We see one question here. I see only one question. I see some comments, but only one question, which is odd. So hope everyone's okay. Maybe everyone's just watching or getting prepped for the draft already. I don't know. Dan D says the following. Good morning, Ray. In a vacuum, which side of this trade would you want? Julio Rodriguez and Jackson Holiday for Adolis Garcia and Jackson Merrill. No keeper ramifications. It's a redraft mixed league. This I would say this. Julio Rodriguez has really found his game the last week or so. He's basically getting 2 hits tonight. We've seen that. Lost a hitting streak last night, but he's been really good. He's back to being Julio Rodriguez. Finally went deep. I still think he's a superstar. Jackson Holiday has been awful. And not just that, he's hit at the bottom of the order. What is he up to? Let's pull up his numbers right now. And again, this is not a combination of Holiday long-term. He can still be a star. He can still be everything that everyone expected. The number 1 offensive prospect in baseball, all that. He's 2 for 34, and he has 18 strikeouts and 34 plate appearances. When he was called up, it was hard to envision a scenario where he gets demoted. I'm still struggling with that, but he's got a 50% strikeout rate. Like, you can't. You're a useless player at that point. Useless. Since it's not a keeper league, I kind of look at this as Julio Rodriguez is an A-level player and Jackson Holiday is a C- if we're being kind. On the other side of things, Adolis Garcia is not the overall fantasy weapon that Julio Rodriguez is, because he's going to steal 12 bases or something like that instead of 30 that Julio Rodriguez is going to get. But Garcia is ripping it up. He's extremely consistent in the counting categories. Got a good lineup around him. By the way, Corey Seager hurt his shin last night. He's in the lineup today for the Rangers. They welcome back Nathaniel Lowe. It's a great park to hit in. Jackson Merrill hasn't been great, but he's been good. He's been very effective, and he's playing every day. And so at the end of the day, for me, I'm taking Garcia and Merrill. The Holiday situation, again, I have to believe it'll be better, but he's got 18 strikeouts and 36 plate appearances. He's just, I mean, that's catastrophic. It's catastrophically bad. And they've done the best they can with Holiday to keep the pressure off him. He's hit 8th or 9th in every start he's made. And, the problem for him as well is things have been so bad. He's got, 5 plate appearances against lefties, and he's 0 for 5. He's haven't got on base. He's nothing. And they've been careful to use him against lefties anyway. And with the way he's performed or not performed to date, he's not playing against left-handed pitching. So he's a strict platoon guy at this point, in my opinion. This one's tough. Again, I'm going to go with Merrill and Garcia. And, the thing is, this is what I call a challenge trade because I don't think there's an obvious answer, Dan. I think that there's a scenario where, Julio Rodriguez goes 30-30 and Jackson Holiday is better than Jackson Merrill the rest of the way. Absolutely, there's a scenario where that happens. But I'm so concerned with Holiday in these early returns, and that's not fair. But we got to live with what we got. And what we got is a player who looks completely overmatched at the moment. We saw, and I always throw the names Trout out there and Willie Mays. Like, this happens to all-time greats. Even Julio Rodriguez, when he started with the Mariners, remember every pitch thrown was being called a strike, and he was strikeout rate was through the roof, and he figured it out. Holiday could completely figure this out. If I will say it this way. I want the Garcia and Jackson Merrill side by a tiny bit. If I had Julio Rodriguez and Jackson Holiday, I wouldn't make the trade. So hopefully that clarifies that question. And it's a little bit of back and forth, and that's always how I answer questions, right? People get annoyed by that. I don't know. Maybe they do. But that's honestly how I would play it. It's a challenge trade. And also matters positionally what you need. Merrill has only played outfield, but he probably qualifies at shortstop too. Holiday's only been in the infield. Does he qualify at second base? Is he second and third? Is he second and short? So that will play into this decision as well, based upon obviously how the rest of your team is also constructed. So there we go, folks. Thanks for listening today to Fantasy Sports Daily, Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be back tomorrow to review things. I will probably talk a little bit about the NFL draft and just how it went down, kind of a synopsis that makes all the sense in the world to do that. We're expecting to be visited by Fantasy Bosco himself. Rich Mileto is going to come on and talk some NASCAR with us tomorrow. So we'll have a visit from Rich. Next week, we're going to continue to do what we're doing this week. We're going to talk some football on Thursdays. Hopefully, we'll talk some baseball. I think Chris Rose is going to join us a couple of times, maybe next week, to talk some DFS. So a lot of exciting things there. You see it on the screen. Don't forget to get the franchise mode over at fantasyguru.com right now. You want to see what's going on in football. You want to have all that update as to what's going on tonight in the draft. Get the franchise mode. You'll have access to all of the reports for the preseason, I guess is the right way to say it, all the free agent movement. You get all the rookie scouting reports. You'll be able to follow on and see if these picks are being made. Are these teams making the right picks? You'll be able to get that with the franchise mode package. And get that baseball package as well. If you get the baseball package, either for DFS or for wagering, you can get them both. Or you can get all three. You can get seasonal too. Put them all together. But if you get the DFS or the wagering package, you get NBA, NHL, PGA, MMA, soccer, and racing for free. And you get all those sports, both DFS and wagering as well. So it's a great add-on. Get the MLB DFS, get the betting MLB, and you get all that extra stuff free. I'm Ray Flowers. Follow me on social medias at the Ray Flowers. I'll be back with you tomorrow here on Fantasy Sports Daily. I got the cash game breakdown. If you're looking to get involved in some action today, you got a few minutes left here. And don't forget that there also will be the closer grid update today at fantasyguru.com. Again, I'm Ray Flowers. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.